Param Puja Swamiji, all of our family here this evening, when we talk about enlightenment, so many of us believe that it's somehow a place to go, something to become, something we have to do, some faraway goal that if we just keep doing the right things in the right way, eventually we'll reach there. And what I want you all to understand deeply, deeply, is that it's not anywhere to go. It's not anything to become. It's the core of who you are, right here, right now. Indian spiritual culture says that the self is perfect, pure, whole, complete, divine. That everything in the universe, and of course not excluding us, everything in the universe is pervaded by the divine. Not just created by the divine, like an artist in his paintings, but actually created of the divine, pervaded by the divine. The very nature of who we are is light. Enlightenment is just living in that. Puja Swamiji always says whenever, because it's a hot topic, so whenever people come, they always say to him, how do I get enlightened? What is enlightenment? And he always says enlightenment is just living in the light. Not the light out there, not the light that belongs to something else that we have to run to get in as though it were a spotlight that we're moving from place to place and we had to keep trying to stay in the light. But the light of who we are. Whenever we are traveling in this country on airplanes, they always have magazines in the back of the seat in front of you on the airplane, and occasionally Puja Swamiji will flip through it just to see what's happening in the city he's going to or across America. And so frequently there are advertisements for various self-development workshops. And he always laughs. He says, self-development? The self doesn't need to be developed. It's as though God somehow did, half a job. He left us kind of half-baked. And now it's up to us to develop it, to finish up the job. No. God did it all right. We're not half-baked. We're not half-done. The self that is made by God, of God, that is divine, that is light, is perfect and pure, and whole and complete, and nothing but light. We talk not about salvation, not about saving us from something, but we talk about liberation. It's a subtle semantic distinction, it sounds like, and yet it's actually very, very deep. Salvation is saving us from something. Liberation is freedom. Freedom from what? Freedom from that which keeps us out of the light. Freedom from that which keeps us bounded, constrained, trapped, tied, chained in the darkness. And what is that? That's what I want to talk about briefly this evening. If the light is there, if who we are is light, then why is it that we're so miserable? Why is it that our lives feel dark and heavy and not light at all? Either light in weight or light in color spectrum. What's happening? And here's where one of my absolute favorite stories comes in. I can't remember where I read it or heard it, but it's one of my all-time favorites, of a temple in Thailand where they'd been worshiping this clay Buddha for hundreds and hundreds of years. And one day the monks in this temple are washing the Buddha. And they notice a little crack in the clay. So something's glimmering from the crack in the clay, and ever so slowly and carefully, because it's their Buddha, they start trying to see what it is that's shining and glimmering from within. And as they make the crack a little bigger to try to get a glimpse of what's inside, they realize it's gold. And slowly, slowly, piece by piece, they discover that this clay Buddha actually is a golden Buddha, covered in clay. And the story goes that when the invaders came, the monks who were in charge of the temple of the golden Buddha were terrified, rightly so, that the invaders would destroy, melt down, loot all of the gold. And so they covered this golden Buddha up with clay to save it, figuring, well, no looter's going to have any interest in anything that's clay. And the good news was the Buddha survived, but the bad news was that the monks didn't. And so no one was left who knew that this Buddha was actually gold. And the reason that I love that story is it is such a beautiful metaphor for our lives. We spend our lives looking for gold. And in each of our minds, it's a different way. Some of us think, if I just had a waist that was this size, or if I just looked like this, or wore those clothes, or had that degree, or that title, or that career. Some of us may go a step deeper. If I just could be like this, or realize that, or understand this, or be knowledgeable about that. But nonetheless, the end result is the same, which is that which I'm looking for is outside of me. Rather than realizing, no, it's actually who I am, but I've covered it up. I've covered it up with this clay. And what is that clay? What is that darkness that keeps us out of the light? What is it that keeps us from not realizing that the light is within us all the time? That darkness, according to the Indian spiritual tradition, is a darkness of ignorance. Just as the light comes from within, so does the darkness. It's not that there's this evil demon darkness, or the villain darkness, or the devil darkness who comes and shrouds our light with his cape and covers it, and then we can't see. As the light comes from within, so does the darkness. But that darkness is a darkness of ignorance. That's all it is. It's an ignorance of not realizing that I'm gold. Every one of us, from young children, one of the things that's most important in our lives is our own identity. Who are we? Hand a child of any age a piece of paper and a pen, and what's the first thing they will write? Their own name. Take them to the beach, they put their finger in the sand, what's the first thing they will write? Their own name. Our identity is very, very important to us. Who are we? And that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. The only problem comes with when we don't know who we really are, and we're not okay with being nothing. We construct these false identities, and that's where the trouble comes. So we base our sense of who we are on the world around us. We get a certain degree, we get a certain career, and we identify with that. I am a PhD. I am a doctor. I am a lawyer. I am a millionaire or a billionaire. I am rich or beautiful, or both. I am so-and-so's husband or wife, so-and-so's mother or father. And so we use these to construct our identities, and the problem is, it's a one-way ticket to suffering, because none of it is permanent. If I identify as I am rich, and the stock market crashes, I lose my money. Well, then not only is my money gone, but my identity is gone. If I identify as I am a doctor, and I get hit with a malpractice suit that takes away my license, or the hospital is downsizing and I get fired or I retire, well, then I haven't only lost my job, I've lost my identity. If I am beautiful, and I get in a car accident that ruins my face, or I age, or my face breaks out, then I lose my sense of self. If I identify as a parent, well, when my kids grow up and move out and no longer need me, not only do I miss them, but I miss me. I've left the house with them. I was so identified as the mother, as the father. My kids went off to college and I'm gone. And what we forget, and this is that darkness of ignorance, is that there's actually an I that's been witnessing it all, that's noticed it all, that's watched it all. Or when we identify with our emotions, I am angry, I am depressed, I am anxious. No. At the present moment, or relatively frequently, there is a pattern of chemical and electrical activity going on in my brain that psychologists or doctors have labeled anger or depression or anxiety. But if I could stick an electrode in your brain, which they can do these days, and make you angry, or make you cry, or make you feel lust, well, then that's not the I. If somebody can open up my brain, the brain actually doesn't have any pain sensors, so it's really easy for them to do all of this research. But they can actually put an electrode in my brain and suddenly make me furious. Well, then that's not I. It's activity going on in my brain at the present moment. Okay, it is termed depression, it is termed sadness, it is termed anxiety. But it's not I. I am the one noticing it. I am the one witnessing it. I'm the one naming it. We identify with our stories and our histories. I'm the one who did this, or I'm the one to whom that happened. I'm a victim. I was abused, I was betrayed, I was abandoned, I always get the short end of the stick. I was cheated. No. Where is that I? If any of that happened to us more than 7 or 8 years ago, there isn't one cell of our being today to which that happened. Every single cell of our being has regenerated between then and now. So who is that I? It's not I. But this identification with it, with this self, this physical self, its history, its chemical and electrical reactions, its particular molecular makeup. That identification with it is the source of our suffering. It's a vehicle, it's a wonderful vehicle, it's very important to take care of it. We only get one. But it's not I. I remember, I shared this at the temple last night or the night before, I remember when I had first come to India. I had been there just a few weeks, I was 25, and Puja Swamiji one day held up a pen. We'll pretend the water is a pen. And he held it up and he said to me, "You are not this pen." And I laughed. Right? I mean, of course, I'm not the pen. Thanks. And he looked at me very seriously. And he said, "There will come a day when you laugh in the same way when I tell you you are not that body, and you are not those emotions, and you are not that history. You are no more the body, the emotions, and the history as you are this pen. You just don't realize it yet." And so suddenly, the whole path to light, to enlightenment, becomes not about getting something or going somewhere or becoming something. It becomes a shift in awareness of that light that's already within us. And here's what's very interesting. It's interesting to me. You'd think it's very appealing. You'd think that what we all wanted to do was to get rid of that clay, get rid of that ignorance, get rid of that false identification. But we're actually very attached to it. When young kids come in from playing outside and they're caked in dirt, and their mom says, "Bath time," what do? They run, they scream, they cry. You'd think they'd say, "Wow, thank you so much, Mom, I'm caked in dirt. Thank you so much for offering to scrub this off of me, to make me clean again." But they don't. They run around the house, they scream, they complain, "I don't want to take a bath." And in the same way, we're very attached to those identities, to that clay. It's what we know. It's familiar. But it's the source of our suffering. And so just as that child, if he had a mother who relented and who said, "Okay, sweetheart, no problem, no bath required," just as that child would not have a very happy life if he were allowed to forsake his bath on a day-to-day basis. It would only be a matter of time before the lack of bathing started to become a real impediment in his life. And suddenly, no matter how awful that bath sounded, it was gonna have to be better than what he was going through by not bathing. And that's what happens to us. No matter how scary, how uncomfortable it feels to pull that off of us, that's what's keeping us from the light. I want to conclude just by sharing one more quick point. This morning, we were taking a walk, Ashwinbai and Jyotiben live in this beautiful little subdivision, and we had a wonderful morning walk around lakes and paths and trees. And as we were walking, enjoying the wonderful sunshine of the morning, Ashwinbai said, if you come here in the wintertime, it's all covered with ice. Not an unusual thing to hear for those of you who live here. And I thought, wow, God, isn't nature amazing? Here we are. It's barely 8 in the morning and it's so hot and sunny already. Same place. Just a few days from now, we'll be freezing and covered in ice. And what changes? Sun doesn't go anywhere. The light doesn't go anywhere. The warmth doesn't go anywhere. What changes between summer and winter? We have shifted. That's all that happens. The sun is just as powerful as it's ever been. It's just shining on the southern hemisphere in our winter time rather than the northern hemisphere. We have shifted away from the sun. And hence, instead of getting sunshine in summer, we get snow in winter. And when does summer come back? When we shift back toward the sun. Now, fortunately for us, we don't have to think much about that. The earth takes care of it itself. But in our lives, it's actually the same. That light is there. It's not coming and going, getting stronger, getting weaker, shining more upon some than upon others. If we're feeling our lives are in darkness, the only question for us becomes, how can I shift myself back to the light? How have I shifted away? And how can I shift back? And that brings us back. Back, not for the first time, but back to the light, to that enlightenment.